All right, everyone. So welcome to Light Painting Brushes Live. This is the brand ambassador edition we've been doing, just meeting the brand ambassadors and just having some conversations with them. And tonight's guest, man, Chris Bauer. I'm super excited about this. He's been such a personal friend and personal inspiration for me. So it's such a pleasure, to have the opportunity and actually sit down with you, man. So with that, Chris, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you and where you're from, man.
Hey, well, thanks for having me on. It's great to talk to you guys here again. Um, I'm from Washington State, like Southwest Washington, kind of in that area, and spend most of my time just hanging out in the outdoors out here. It's still, I've moved around the area a little bit the last few years, but I'm still close to Mount St. Helens, which is my favorite stomping grounds, and so lots of beautiful rivers and creeks and ponds and things for me to paddle around in here, and and some good work. So
Not only that, those lava caves, man, that you get to
yeah,
explore at Mount St. Helens are just
and that really was the
gosh, I'd love to
beginning
see
of my
that.
life. Yeah,
Right?
beautiful. Um,
Awesome.
I've seen a lot of, pictures can be taken with a flash, and it just seemed like it was always kind of a really harsh light in one direction, or unless you had multiple flashes placed around a cave like that. And to be able to
Right.
light paint the caves, that's kind of how I started, with no actual light source being shown, but just a lot of exposing and learning how to cast across and make shadows across the walls, and just really make a neat image in one exposure. And that's kind of how I started light painting, was like under bridges and lighting undersides of bridges and trees, and then the caves and other things like that, long before I even started with the actual artwork. So
How long has that been? So like how long have you been light painting and how did you first discover it?
well, I'd say that all of this started with a lot of video stuff of just going down rivers and whitewater with my friends. And we just would go to a few spots of whitewater and actually set a camera up and go over like waterfalls over and over again.
Right.
And that turned into more video in the snow in the wintertime, because the rivers kind of, ran out into summer. And so we're up snowboarding, making videos and things. And one of my really good friends, Bill Burke, is a really good photographer. And there was always this image hanging on his wall in his room. And I actually have a print of it hanging, because it's the thing that got me going and really interested. I was like, why does this look so unique? And there's the movement in the clouds. And it was just a simple picture of a barn and a field. And he said that he had lit the grass up with a flashlight and exposed the barn with the headlights of his car.
Awesome.
And the image was just really intriguing, because it had so much dynamic to it because of the long exposure and the light, the way it was applied. So uh, it was even another year or two, but I just never forgot about that picture and the way it
Right.
looked, and like I wanted. After we did a lot of video for a long time, he went away to school and he came back from the Hallmark Institute of Photography, and so he had a lot of really good knowledge, and he just kind of passed along of it on to me. And we went out with I bought a camera and started going out shooting with him, and I wanted to learn how to shoot, manually right away. And I was very interested in going out at night, so
Right.
we would just go out and start taking those pictures based on that barn picture. I was just really interested in making everything look like that. I thought it was so cool that it was like, okay, we gotta go here, we gotta go there. All these spots I knew from playing outside all those years.
Right.
And
What's crazy is you're talking about the inspiration of seeing something from somebody else's work, and it's
uh,
further down into this interview we're actually going to hit on that. So
yeah,
it's kind of awesome that you're talking about that. You
and
know,
there's so many reasons that there's so many different people that have little bits and pieces of amazing things they've done that have inspired me to try different stuff. So that's usually where most of it comes from, is inspiration from others.
absolutely, man. It's so crazy seeing you without your hair too, man.
Oh
But
my gosh,
yeah,
you know
so
how good this feels though. This is great.
all the conversations we've had and the times we've talked and everything, I've always seen you with a full head of hair. So it's just
Yeah,
crazy
I
to
had
see it
those
all
big
short.
dreadlocks for all those years, and then I
Yeah,
grew it back last year, and it just started to get to be a pain in the butt, so I just shaved it off and
awesome.
so nice and easy and not hot, and it's great. So I'm
Um,
glad it's a little bit. It's starting to go. I can feel myself getting old really fast.
right, right. Well, it looks clean, man. Um, how would you answer this question? You know, what is light painting? What would your response be to that?
Well, I'd say that to me, a light painting is a performance um, that we use cameras to capture that, and I do think it's important to learn all the aspects of photography so you can apply them to the canvas we use. Um, but yeah, as soon as that button clicks, it's like that you're not really using too many photography techniques anymore unless you're changing your aperture size or something like that. And I think it's I'd have to say it at least be a 1 second image, 1 second long with some kind of an intent to it, as
Right.
far as whether it's kinetic or something you're moving, or some kind of light being applied in either the source or to expose an area that would regularly be like silhouetted or shadowed. So
Awesome, awesome.
yeah.
You know, so I asked you, let me screen share real quick. Just give me 1 second. So I asked you, you know, what is your favorite image using the light painting brushes, and you sent me this. So when I looked at this, I thought when I saw this guy, I instantly thought of like Old Man Winter or something like that.
Yeah. I
Uh,
actually thought of Santa Claus the first time I saw it
oh,
too,
there
like
you go, Santa.
fashion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's really cool, man. So what's going on here? What tools were did you use? What's the story behind this image?
Well, the story is big because, and probably the reason, I mean, I do love the image, but there's such a massive story to it. And a lot of it is being with friends. Like that's Todd Blaisdell, is one in that picture. Uh, I was there with Aaron Colmer and Derek Lawrence and Michelle Lark. And my wife and I went down to Port Angeles to meet these guys, and we were in an army bunker for the night, and were staying at the campground. And so this image, there wasn't any fireworks being used in the forest at all here. It's the doorway and the leaves on the ground in front of Santa Claus there were in the army bunker, and so I'm in a completely concrete enclosed area that's safe for what we did, and we're using just one of those very small fountains with a rope attached to it, and I lit it and just stood behind Todd while I spun it, and got really lucky with that one pop that came out of the door. Like a nice little flash there. It's just one of those little lucky things you get in light painting here and there, that you can't plan or predict. But that was very cool to get that little spark. And so at the end of the spin, I came out around to the front of Todd, and I had the hooded filter red, and I just painted his coat, which is already red, but it just kind of made it nice and exposed red. And then from there, I attached the round circle plexi on and placed a couple in his hand by just holding it for maybe 2 seconds a piece per circle, coming up and out like bubbles kind of coming out of his hand. And this is completely just on the fly made up. There was no, it was, once I was done with the circles, I actually put the lens cap on and then just walked out into the forest. And I didn't have a spot planned at all. I just walked out there and set the tripod down. And I'm using a fisheye, which generally, if I put my head like where the camera is, directly, like almost my chin on it, I can tell what pretty much the area that I'm shooting in and what I will see. And
Right.
I knew that I had composed him to the left side slightly, so I knew what I was kind of working with and where I would like him to be. And I took the cap off and I used that red hooded filter again on the trees that are around the doorway to show as if red light was coming out of the door kind of and around him. And then I used a regular flashlight, one of the big, it's the Coast, I want to say it's HP 550. I use
Right.
that for all of my stuff in the background. I love that thing. It gives me a nice, really natural color to the scene. So I like that flashlight a lot.
Well, it's beautiful, man, and what a great group of people to actually share that experience with. I can't help whenever I hear Derek's name, Lawrence, uh,
Uh-huh.
his the piano. I always think of the piano.
Oh
That
man,
that
that is
that
an
image
awesome
is
picture.
just so iconic to
I
light
love
painting.
that.
It really is, man. Um, so there's a pretty amazing technique that you've created. And honestly, it's one of my favorites, man. It's the Yeti. So let's talk about the Yeti, man. How did this come about? Like, what's the backstory with the Yeti?
Well, I part of it is the amount of where I live. There's this Sasquatch, Bigfoot stuff everywhere out here by Mount St. Helens, um, and Yetis and all that kind of stuff. So this is actually the picture in the ice. There was, I think, 2014 or so, and I was in one of the lava tubes up there that's known as an ice cave, and it's still lava, but it's got a lot of ice in it. And I took that picture there, and it was the Ice Man cometh, and it was supposed to kind of be a Yeti mummy kind of picture. And um, from there, a couple years later, this is now I want to say 2015, and I officially have the light painting brushes. There was a smaller diamond blade I think we had back then,
Right.
and that's I made it, in a similar way with that, and it just, I don't know, that picture came out really, really nice, and I liked it, but I didn't really touch on it a lot more for a couple more years. And then Johnny came out with the unicorn, and I was out one night on another trip with more friends, like Mac Murdock and Bill Burke and some of these guys, and we're the Eagle Cap Wilderness. All is where I made the Yetis first. We were actually the night before in the Alvord Desert, and I want to say that same little diamond blade, and I created something with color, and it came out really good. But and I liked it a lot. So the next night when we had hiked up to the top of this mountain, my wife actually suggested you should try that same thing but with the unicorn, because I didn't know what to do with it. We had just gotten him in the mail, and we were practicing, what can be done with this. And so I made the very first picture, and instantly, I loved it. It had the Yeti had fur. So
Right.
um, and some of these images is before I really started getting a consistent face on all of them. I was trying to always get a mouth and eyes, and it's really hard when you're using like plexiglass and moving like that but eventually I figured it out and was able to get like a lot of consistency out of it. It took me probably a good year or so constantly doing it to get more predictable pictures. And
What's so cool about it is, and it actually hits on the next question here is, how important do you feel for a light painter to come up with a technique such as what you're doing with the Yetis? And I like to call it a light signature. There's something that an artist will do, and they stick with it, they're persistent with it, and it develops and manifests itself into these beautiful creations. And that's exactly what you've done with the Yeti series. Is you've taken a technique, and over time you've developed it into, you've just been persistent with it, and
I,
it's turned into something beautiful, man. And I was looking at this image right here, man, and this right here,
I
man.
love the
I
way that
cannot
moon
stop
in the
looking at
center,
that, man. With the
the
moon
way
in
that
the center there, and the way the trees are.
yeah, yeah, that's a favorite. I
Where
love
where was this taken at?
that's up on Mount St. Helens on Swift Creek. There's actually a big reservoir down below the mountain called Swift Creek Reservoir, and uh, so you can barely see it there. But on the left is a river, and I think the full image has a little more. But I just got it's funny how most of these pictures are just done on the fly. The moon and the tree line making the body kind of was such
Right.
an accident. Like, um,
And then if you
and
tried to do it again, it would never happen.
never again.
Never
Yeah.
again. Yeah.
Um, I can tell you, I really want to make a video. I think I'm going to call it Going Big, and talk about how these are done, because they're all me in that picture.
Right.
But what I can say is that if you have a good dark space first to make the big Yeti, you put your camera all the way down at your knees, lower the tripod and the camera all the way down as far as you can go. Now the perspective is at your knees. Simply raising all the legs, the neck, everything all the way up. Now the perspective is looking down at my head. And
Interesting. Yeah.
without doing any major movement of the camera and like multiple tripods. Sometimes I like to put tripods all over the place with all these pre-planned composition for everything. And you can really that's how I get the really big ones in there is just simply by um but like going tall to short for the
That's
two.
interesting that you say that,
The
because
big one is the short
there's
and the
a
tall one is the big.
right there's a photography technique called aggravated perspective. You get that from different using different lenses, whether it's
Uh-huh.
wide angle, telephoto. So you're hitting right on that aggravated
Yeah,
perspective. So that's really cool, man. Um,
yeah,
yeah, these are just so awesome, man. Just the Yetis are just it's just a such a cool technique, man. It's so cool, and I love how you incorporate the environment, man. You just
yeah.
put these Yetis in just the coolest places, man, that really complement all of it together into this beautiful image. So I've got to hit. Here's that cave. This is Mount St.
That's
Helens,
yeah, that's actually Ape Cave, the entrance to Ape Cave up there. And that's the more public cave on the mountain that you could get to from a parking lot. I think you have to have tours nowadays, uh
how
but
far
yeah,
back can
that's
you
just
walk
the
in there?
entrance. Oh, that one of the longer ones up there. I'd be guessing, but I'd say at least a mile.
Right, and that's you up here on the top too. So
Yeah. So just walking around and then having to feel my way down that staircase. Actually, I started with the one in the furthest back in the cave.
right,
I use a 20-second timer for most of my light paintings, so I can see that light flashing on the camera as I get into position. And it's still on bulb mode, but it's locked in with a timer. So it just gives me time, whatever I'm doing, to already be in motion. So when it clicks, I'm already moving. I'm not getting started. And uh, so I was able to run back there with a flashlight, get in position, turn it off. And then something I've always used is those little glow in the dark red star or glow in the dark stars.
right,
So I set those glow in the dark stars to know where to put the other Yetis. And then I literally climbed out of the cave just by feel. So I didn't leave any light anywhere and did the last one up in the woods. And then that was it. Yeah.
what would you say typically your exposures are for these? Like what are your settings you think you're
F11 at
all
ISO
right,
100. Yeah, the F11 because of the amount of overlapping that happens.
right,
So the more times you overlap the same area, you can really start to blow it out. So I just use a higher, or I don't know if that's a lower or higher aperture, but a smaller one anyway,
right,
that matches the flashlight I'm using. It might be different if you're using more powerful flashlight. I do that Coast HP5R for almost everything. It's a very small rechargeable flashlight, and it's got 3 frequencies on it, and I just love that little thing because of the rechargeable and um, that 550 I use on the trees in the background when I'm done every
right.
time.
What
There's
about what
different.
about this? How are you getting this? Is that same
Same thing. This is
technique you were talking about with your
yeah,
knees?
yep,
Okay,
down at the knees with the big Yeti, and then we put the camera down with the fisheye. So I'm kind of just looking. It's not planned really. And he's the second shot is him in the actual environment, and I light him with a flashlight, and then the cave, and you just hope. And a lot. The thing that I always really like about the big Yetis is they're always further back,
right,
like in the background instead of in front of everything. So it's just kind of cool. It always places it in the distance, and it's just kind of gives it a unique feel. Like you can't tell what was if the person was added or the Yeti was added. So it's
right,
kind of fun. But also it works with just uh, regular people or any object. If you get down low and then go up high, you get these. You can make something very small look big, and I move the camera all over the place. But the high to low thing is just something that's how I get those. So
this tree, man.
yeah, that's up in the Olympic National Forest, just north of us, and that's on one of the beaches, and I think they call it the Tree of Life. But yeah, it's hanging on both sides, and I kept seeing pictures of it, so I had to go up there and see those stars with the bright star on the tip is still even manual aperture. Where I started out with a brighter aperture, more open, probably 5.6 to light the tree, HP 550, the same thing. And then I go in and pinch it down to 11, and you can see the size of the star change.
Right.
She thought about doing star trails manually, like 5 minutes per aperture, and going down and seeing what
Oh
I can,
man,
you
that
know.
is a crazy idea right
Haven't
there.
haven't done that yet, but it's just things like that I just think about all the time while I'm at work or whatever I'm doing. I seem to, I mean, I could go forever and just consistently think about light painting every day.
Right.
I love
And,
doing it, it's so fun. So
well,
that's a
man,
good one.
it's such a cool technique, and just yeah, I mean, I was going through trying to just pick some of these, and it was so hard just to kind of narrow it down. So I had a bunch on here, but these last two, man, were two of my just favorites. Just
Yeah,
Blue Hour right here.
yeah. You can see right to the above the small Yeti,
Uh-huh.
straight up and slightly to the right. That's the actual comet coming Neowise coming in, and that's why I was there.
Cool, man. Cool.
So there's, yeah, it was just blue hour waiting for the comet to show up, and thought I'd throw a couple Yetis in, and just fun. That's on the way home from Johnson Ridge on Mount St. Helens, and I go fishing here a lot. It's called Silver Lake. And first I drew one standing and his head was gone because of the sky. So I did one sitting and it was all there. So it worked out that way. But it took me a couple shots. I was in a big hurry with sunrise.
Right. So you know what's crazy enough is you're already doing this crazy technique with these Yetis and everything. And as if this wasn't cool enough, I think this next thing we're going to talk about is really going to blow some minds. So let me pull up your Instagram here. How do I get to there we go. Right here. So man, you're doing stop motion, man, with these things.
Oh
So
man.
like walk us through this, man. I mean, this is super, super cool, man, that you're taking that Yeti a step forward,
Yeah.
further and actually doing like a stop motion with it.
Okay. So here I'm in my garage at my old house that I had a few years back, and I had painted the entire garage flat black, and I would use those walls like a chalkboard. So basically, the finish, the entire video is backwards, except for the part where he kicks the board up. So on the wall, and I even started to try and draw it as I went, and I was like, okay, no, this isn't gonna work. So
Right.
all the entire uh, light painting brushes logo with chalk on the wall, and then I did just the light bulb first, um, and did it 4 or 5 times for that little bit of light painting wiggle, that gets in the video, and then from there, as he's drawing it, this is played in reverse. So I light the whole thing, and then on the next one, I erase 2 inches of the chalk and move his hand. So when the picture starts, I put his hand right where that is, and the light draw the Yeti, and then from there, do what's left of the chalk all the way to the end, just continuously erase more and more of it until, but just to start each exposure, put your hand where the chalk has been erased to. So then when it goes plays the other way, it looks as if it's all being drawn.
Right. I mean, how long are these exposures, man? Like so each
Crazy. Each one's only maybe a minute or two, but I'm on tables covered in black blankets and all kinds of crazy stuff to get this the air, for me to be in the air, actually draw the Yeti, remove the table, light the skateboard, move it forward 2 inches, and so on. And um, I have a large collection of buckets and pieces of wood and all these different things that were perfect to hold the board in different positions. And I just, and a lot of black blankets to cover those things to hide them.
right,
And fabric seems to not absorb light the same way other, I don't know, it just seems to do really well. Like even flesh just seems to expose very quickly compared to fabric, so especially black fabric.
well,
So fabric is huge, and as far as hiding what you don't want to be seen.
it's super impressive, man. It's just
It's fun.
I knew right when we were going to have you on, we had to talk about this and just hear what you had to say, man. But let me go back to something here. So let's talk about these because I want to give me 1 second, move this over. I'm new at this.
Hey, I'm learning too. I'd like to be able to.
All right, so let's go back to this. So, maybe you know or know this, or maybe you don't, but you're responsible for sharing your incredible work within our community that I believe has helped others grow into their own creativity. Simply just showing your creative ability. And what's more impressive, than these mosaics that you do, man? It's like this is a super involved, it's super creative, and it's just so fascinating, man. So tell us, how did the mosaics get started? How did this idea come about?
Just living in the Pacific Northwest and lots of rain and the inability to go outside. Also massively inspired by Rinehart, who is has made just some of the most amazing mosaics. And when I saw his work originally, I fell in love with it and wanted to make something like it, but a little different. I went with squares, and just the process has changed and has so many different levels of it that I'd love to come up with some kind of a way to share how, because some of it's raw, like right directly light to the lens, and some of it's done through filters where I'm drawing like behind, like say like your bed sheet,
Right.
but more of like an opaque, so just different things like that. And when I'm drawing on the filters, that was inspired by Johnny Andrews' Stimulate the Night with his sexy plexi technique.
Right.
And I never actually watched it, but all he did was suggest it. And I was like, oh, I know what to do with this. And so I just yeah, just try. So I use a lot of different stuff, and I also use both in one. I've made I call it my light easel that I use for each one of these, and some of the I'm shooting through a square, which is basically a square stencil. If you look at it that way, that makes a nice perfect square, and I can shoot straight through it or attach the different backgrounds to shoot through in one shot. So it's just really
How
fun. It can go so deep.
how long do these typically take from start to finish? Is this just months of work, or is it just
Some of them are just, I'd have to say when I was really doing a lot of stencil work, I was working a different job at night and I'd get off at 8 a.m. and I had all day, to light paint, and I'd go to bed about 6 p.m. And right now I'm working, like a more of like a 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. And it's really hard for me to find that energy and time like I did then. So otherwise you'd see a lot more of these still. So
this one
um,
here is one of my favorites, man.
circumstances of life,
Yeah,
at that time really made it to where I could create just massively day in and day out. And right now it's a lot harder for me to find that time. But I look at this time as possibly, I have all that stuff from 12 years of light painting that I can teach with now too. And I don't necessarily need to continuously make new stuff. I can just make it here and there when I have a really good idea, and spend the rest of the time maybe helping the community grow, or if anybody finds it interesting, I can find a way to help them move forward. So
absolutely, man. That's awesome. It's so, like I said, it's so intriguing what you're doing, man. Just it's this now these are drawings of your own, like you're literally drawing this out. And
yep, yeah, I actually, and what I like about these mosaics is most of it's done on a giant piece of paper, and it's all felt pens, literally crayons, rulers. I'm writing numbers out and cutting them up, so it's like an actual art project. And I like that it takes a lot of time instead of just like a lot of nights I'll go out light painting and you're cranking pictures off one after another. And sometimes it's nice just to have a project that you work on for a long time and has a lot of meaning when you're done. It's really something you're really proud of. So
oops, and then this,
Hey Jay,
yeah,
mind if I jump in real quick?
absolutely.
I just want to explain what this lunatic is actually doing. I don't think people really understand. Every single one of those tiles that you guys see in those images is an individual light painting, correct?
yes.
And then what he's doing is, so you're taking a drawing, then you're breaking it down into every one of those individual squares, and then light painting every individual square, then printing them out, putting them together to make one single giant light painting, correct?
Yes, exactly.
You're insane.
And
It's so, I mean, just the complexity of this like, I understand what you're saying. You were talking about the different ways that you're light painting each one of those individual tiles in itself is masterful work. But the fact that this is like, how many different light paintings is this single image? Do you know, the one that's on screen?
960 some.
How many?
I intentionally made that with no blacks, so it would truly be 960 some odd squares.
Those
Also,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
okay, yeah, this big one here, it looks mirrored. And when you look close, there's a lot of difference on the both sides. Just little changes I made to make it not be, but also I just, when I was talking about earlier, like that sexy plexi, I do number one and then say, I don't know how many across those were, maybe 24. So one, then turn that around and redraw it again as 24, then turn it around and then do 2 and 23 and then 3 and 23, you know? And so that way it looks mirrored, but you're just redrawing and then flipping it. And that's something I'll go into and try and build something that can be, you know, that people could try.
Yeah, hey Jason, that's all you got to do, man. You just got to, draw something, and just flip it over and
900, that one right there is 960 individual light paintings put together to create that one image. And like he said, just so everyone's clear, it's not mirrored. You're doing that intentionally, trying to get, it absolutely blows my mind how good that is.
absolutely,
It's insane.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Hey, Jason, do we have, I can't see the chat from this screen. Is there you see any questions in there?
I see a bunch of minds blown. I see wows, unreal, so awesome. Holy cow. You're incredible. You're a genius. You're a lunatic. It's insane, man. It's so good.
Yeah, I truly just love creating those images. And I tell you, it's I can draw it and color it and plan it out, but it looks so much cooler light painted. Like I can do so much better with light than I can with any other medium as far as making art. So I think that light painting just has a little pop to it that is with the textures, and it's just so unique. It's hard to put your finger on if you don't know what it is.
And to hit on that, what's kind of a bummer about it is, like, let's say you were showcasing this. I don't think people truly can appreciate what exactly is going on here, because you've got to have there's a lot of things that got to come together, and a lot of knowledge and a lot of technique and just experience to be able to pull something like this together. And I don't think a lot of people can truly appreciate that, what really you are doing right here, so it's super impressive, man. It really is
Something that's been fun for me, like during the holidays. There's like the chance to go out and like do like bazaars where they have all the crafts and all the things for sale, and it's so fun to explain to people what exactly it is in person. I just think that's like the I have more fun in person showing work than anywhere, just because you can really explain it.
right.
Probably get overly excited, explaining it, and they walk away with just like knowing something that they didn't even know was around. And light painting is becoming popular, but it's still a very unknown medium.
Absolutely, man. When I reached out to you and I knew we were going to do this interview, I wanted to this image right here. I wanted to hit on something about this image. So I knew I couldn't sit down with you without talking about this, because this image for me is one that is probably one of the most influential light paintings for me personally. Not that a lot of my work is a direct imitation of what you're doing, but I just want to have the opportunity to tell you thank you personally, because this image here actually has sparked so many different ideas for me. Matter of fact, some of the more complex stuff that I do with the sheet technique actually came from this image right here.
Awesome.
So I knew that I needed to take a moment and actually, thank you, because this particular image, like I said, has been such a stepping stone for me in my own creativity and a lot of things that I do. Um, what with that, what is going on here? Like what can you talk about this image a little bit and
I, in fact, I think there might be an old breakdown from way back in the day on light painting photography about this, and it was made. There's a garden globe. She's basically, this is my wife, and she's wonderful. She's in 90% of my artwork that I make. She's such a huge help for me, whether she's in it or not. And there's a garden globe, like one of the glass balls, and it's basically laying right on the floor, and she's laying on her back. And I have the camera. When I start the exposure, it just started to the right, and then just a simple flip rotation to make it look like she's laying, standing. And I have laser pens with the buttons taped down so they won't shut off. And basically, I believe I started the image by going behind the garden globe and using, I think we had our hooded filters, the red, and I want to say it was red and yellow. It's hard for me to remember for sure. And then coming out of it, you see a little bit of rainbowy stuff. And I actually think I'm going to recreate that tool to share, because I called it the Galaxy brush. And it was one of the things that I was directly inspired by when Jason first sent me the whole kit in 2014. It was like the original light painting brushes, and his idea, to be able to use regular bottles and other things to create even more stuff that would attach. And there's like glitter and broken CDs and all kinds of stuff in this thing to move around and not give you a consistent line the whole time. So I'll have to explain that later on, maybe in another post.
What's also really cool, when it's something that I've taken from your work and applied it into my own, the images that I create, is if you look through your work, there is a difference between when you're light painting with your wife versus you're doing something else. So that image actually speaks a little different. There's like a different feel to it.
Yeah.
There's visually, there's more, I don't know if you want to say more of a spiritual, there's more of a connection that you can see. And
Yeah.
I at least this is how I interpret it. And from that, I've kind of approached my work in that way, of interpreting feelings and emotions and connections that I have with people around me, and show that in a light painting. So, am I crazy for thinking that way? I mean,
No, not at all. I think
yeah, because
that
I
closeness
totally
to
see
your
it, man, and
friends,
that's something I
family,
picked up on. Yeah,
yeah, closeness to friends and family, and people you meet, while you're light painting, it just seems to create some kind of a bond. And
right.
it's almost easier in that sense to create with people because they know what you're doing, they trust what you're doing. And once you do something with somebody all the time, they get to know exactly what is happening and what you're in for. And the only time we get to really feel that is when we end up on the other end of the lens and
Right.
someone's
Yeah.
painting us. But those images, whenever a friend who's a light painter light paints me, I love those pictures. And I think it's just because you have that special time with a person, opposed to, like you're saying, there's a lot of images that I make that don't have human in them, but there's still it's a different level of creativity. You're by yourself and you're just thinking and experimenting, and sometimes it's hard to, sorry, my screen just did something weird.
I stopped sharing.
Sometimes it's hard to, oh, okay. Sometimes it's hard to go practice and do stuff over and over and over again with people,
Right.
where when you're by yourself, you can experiment and no one gets tired of it.
Where does your inspiration come from for what you create? We're kind of hitting on that now, but what drives your creativity to create the things that you're doing?
I think over the years, it's just been a lot of mostly different light painters to start with, first and foremost. Um, James Lawn, James DeLuna he's a big inspiration of mine, and we really touched 2013 and just touched base regularly. And he was so good with all those lens swap type things where he was tiny sitting on the edge of his sink or doing, all kinds of things like that. And the moons in the pictures. a telescope lens and three triple lens swap, and just really gifted. And that's how it all started. He just, there's a lot of guys right there in the beginning that really got me going with that. And I just found that really intriguing that you could do those things. So
I saw where Laura was saying, back in the Flickr light junkie days. So,
yes,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yeah, those guys, yeah, there's just so many names that come along that I feel bad if I miss a bunch too.
Right. What would you tell someone who just started out light painting, or, honestly, what is the best advice you would give them, or is there anything you would like to say to the community?
I think just, and love it for what it is. Love where you're at while you're doing it. Like, especially if you're in nature, not just, I like to be there, but I just really appreciate like the surroundings I'm in. It's a chance for you to kind of express yourself. And I find a lot of peace in it. Take your time. Don't get discouraged if things aren't working out the way you want them to, and don't try and do what someone else is doing to the point to where you're trying to match that and be disappointed. Like, be really happy with what you do, because it's very magical and unique, very unique, and you'll find your way and what makes you over time. But I think it is important to learn what's already out there, because that's how you discover what you can do, and new techniques are going to come from yourself, really. As long as I find that I evolve and like come up, the more active I am, the more it happens.
Right.
The less active I am, like, I think about it a lot, but as soon as I actually start light painting, I can't even hardly get through a shot before I got, the next idea is coming in, and I'm just trying to get through this one. And sometimes it gets so wild I have to start writing stuff down because it just floods in. But it's part of it, if you're active and you're really active, and try it all the time to get better, and you'll just get better and better. Whatever it is you decide you love, you're gonna.
I was going to show you something about writing down. This is a little book I have. Oh, I forgot.
Cool.
I got my backdrop on there, but I don't know how to turn it off mid-live. But yeah, okay. So I got a book, man, and I just always jot stuff down. It's got drawings and just all kinds of stuff is in this. One day this would be an awesome museum piece. I hope so. But hey, man, what's the best way to follow along with you? Instagram, Facebook, Flickr, what's the preferred way of following along with you?
Everything's been a mess for the last few years, but and then just as I got started back with you guys, something happened to my Facebook account, and I don't know what happened, but I just decided to just start over, and here we are. So I guess definitely light painting brushes, tips and tricks, because I want to make sure to spend more time there probably than anywhere as far as Facebook goes. Instagram, I need to get back into it. I've been just working way too much. I'll be honest. That's all I just, so much work. But Jason told me a long time ago, it's okay to share old stuff, because old stuff is still, new stuff for a lot of people.
Right.
So I think with the light painting brushes, tips and tricks, there's years of stuff that I could share that I've never really shared on there. So I think I'll just make regular stops and say hi and share what I can, and if anybody has questions, and just do what I can to help out.
Awesome, man. Well, Chris, with that, man, that's it, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's really such a pleasure always to get to talk with you, man. And like I said, for me personally, you've been a huge inspiration. So just keep doing what you're doing. Not only, with light painting, but you as a human, the conversations we had and when we talk, man. So thank you for being you, man. I really appreciate you.
Thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate you having me on.